Chapter 6: The Immutable Laws of Screenplay Physics. The real inspiration for this book started with one simple desire. I had a whole bunch of snappy rules for screenwriting and I wanted to get credit for coining them. There, I said it. There were little ironclad laws that my screenwriting buddies and I have collected over the years, and I love them. It's because, to me, screenwriting is a science as much as an art. It's quantifiable. The rules that govern it are constants and, in some cases, eternal. See Joseph Campbell. Like any study of the craft of storytelling, these truths become apparent as you watch movie after movie, and when one of these immutable laws is suddenly clear to you, the urge to yell Eureka is overwhelming. You want to plant your flag on it and claim it as your own. Of course it's not. These laws can't be discovered. They are truths that existed way before you or I come along. Yet every time another one pops into my lexicon, I'm thrilled. I love these immutable laws of screenplay physics so much I wanted to make this whole book about nothing else but common sense intervened. To get to the good part, I had to explain the screenwriting process from idea to execution in order for anyone to understand what I was talking about. And aren't you glad I did? But even though this is the dessert part for me, the fun, the raison d'etre of the whole operation, there are some of you out there who will still want to pee on my Pop-Tarts. Yes, there will be a few among you who will doubt my rules. You are the type of person who bucks the system, who wants to make your own rules. Thank you very much. When told that you can't do something, you want to do it all the more. You know, a screenwriter. To those of you who doubt me, bravo, but at least let me show off a little bit here. Let me run amok ego-wise and tell you how smart I am to have uncovered these things before you go and stomp them dead. And try to remember the value of knowing these is so that you can override them. Before Picasso could dabble in cubism, he had to become a master of basic drawing. It gave him credibility and authority. So for you budding Picassos, a few of my screenwriting basics. Save the Cat. I found that Save the Cat, the title of this book, and the screenwriting law it denotes, is amazingly controversial. Though many screenwriters have shown this manuscript, they too are impressed with its premise. A few are horrified with this one idea and find it my least best thought. Many think my example of Save the Cat, found in Sea of Love, as detailed in the introduction of this book, is old-fashioned and the worst piece of advice in an otherwise helpful primer. Not only that, they find the idea of making the hero likable to be cloying and dull, and exercise in kissing up to the audience. To review Save the Cat is the screenwriting rule that says the hero has to do something when we meet him so that we like him and want him to win. Does this mean that every movie we see has to have some scene in it where the hero gives a buck to a blind man in order to get us on board? Well, no, because that's only part of the definition. So on behalf of my hypercritical critics, allow me a mid-course addition. The adjunct to Save the Cat says a screenwriter must be mindful of getting the audience in sync with the plight of the hero from the very start. To explain what I mean, let's take a look at a movie that definitely doesn't try to kiss up to the audience, Pulp Fiction. Scene 1 of Pulp Fiction basically is where we meet John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson. These are the heroes. They are also drug addicted hitmen with really bad haircuts. Quentin Tarantino does a very smart thing when we meet these two potentially unlikable guys. He makes them funny and naive. Their discussion about the names of McDonald's hamburgers in France is hilarious and sort of childlike. We like these guys from the jump. Even though they're about to go kill someone, we are with them. In a sense, Tarantino absolutely follows the STC rule. He knows he has a problem. These two guys are about to do something despicable. And in the case of Travolta, he will become one of the main characters of the film, a guy the audience must like in order to root for him. Well, after meeting these two crazy knuckleheads, we do like them. They're funny. Instead of risking the audience's goodwill by making them existential hard asses without a soul, screenwriter Tarantino, in his own way, makes them sorta huggable. Save the cat. The problem of making anti-heroes likable or heroes of a comeuppance tale likable enough to root for can also be finessed with STC. The immutable laws of screenplay physics tell us that when you have a semi-bad guy as your hero, just make his antagonist worse. A little further on in the introductory scene of Pulp Fiction, Tarantino does just that. Before he and Samuel Jackson reach the door of the victims, Travolta raises the specter of their boss and tells a story of how an underling like himself was thrown out of a window for giving the boss's wife a foot massage. This is just another example of a great STC trick. When your hero is slightly damaged goods, or even potentially unlikable, make his enemy even more horrible. If you think Travolta is bad, well, look at the boss. Travolta is a doll compared to that guy, and bingo, the scales of whom we like versus whom we hate are adjusted to perfect balance. Let the rooting begin. The problem of unlikable heroes even occurs in nice family films. My favorite Save the Cat example, and one that I repeat way too often, comes from the Disney movie Aladdin. When developing this hit film, Disney found they had a real problem with the likability of the main character. Go back and read the source material. Aladdin, as described in the original stories, is kind of a jerk. Spoiled, lazy, and to make matters worse, a thief. Thank God Disney had Terry Rossio and Ted Elliott on their team. Rossio and Elliott are to me the two best screenwriters working in Hollywood today, and so unsung. Where is their publicist? What these two crafty writers did was give Aladdin an introduction that solved the problem and was a classic example of Save the Cat. In that 100 million plus hit, the first thing we see Aladdin do is impishly steal food because, well, he's hungry. Chased by palace guards with scimitars all over the market square, a great way to introduce where we are to, by the way. Aladdin finally eludes them. Safe and alley, he is about to chow down on his stolen pita when he spots two starving kids. And what a guy, Aladdin gives his falafel snack to them. Well, now we're with Aladdin. And even though he's not quite the original thieving, laid-out character, we're rooting for him. Because Rossio and Elliot took time to get us in sync with the plight of this unlikely hero. We want to see him win. The point of all this is care. Though you don't have to have a scene in every movie where the hero literally saves a cat, helps an old lady cross the street, or get splashed with water and the street. at the street corner to make us love him, you must take the audience by the hand every time out and get them in sync with your main character and your story. You must take time to frame the hero situation in a way that makes us root for him, no matter who he is or what he does. If you go the Lara Croft road and assume we'll like your main character just because you're not doing your job. And even though some movies do this and get away with it, it doesn't make it okay or good and careful storytelling. Am I off the hook on this now, fellow screenwriters? The pop in the pool. The pop in the pool is more of a trick than a rule, but it's a fun one that I love to talk about and one that I see done on screen all the time. It's also one of the first insights passed on to me by Mike Cheddar, script master. Your problem is how to bury the exposition. Exposition is backstory or details of the plot that must be told to the audience in order for them to understand what happens next. But who wants to waste time on this? It's boring. It's a scene killer. It's the worst part of any complicated plot. So, what's a good and caring screenwriter to do? Mike Cheddar told me about a script he once read called The Plot to Kill the Pope by George England, which did a very smart thing. It's basically a thriller, and the scene where we learn the details of the vital backstory goes like this. Representatives visit the Pope at the Vatican, and guess where the meeting takes place? The Vatican pool. There the Pope, in his bathing suit, swims laps back and forth while the exposition unfolds. We, the audience, aren't even listening, I'm guessing. We're thinking, I didn't know the Vatican had a pool. And look, the Pope's not wearing his Pope clothes. He's in his bathing suit. And before you can say, where's my meter, the scene's over. The Pope in the pool. The Pope in the pool comes up all the time, but I've written one scene using this trick that I'm really proud of. It was in a script called Drips that Colby Carr and I wrote and sold to Disney, a comedy, duh. Drips is about two dumb plumbers who are tricked into an oil stealing plot that is to unfold beneath the streets of Beverly Hills. Suckered into the heist by a beautiful girl, Plum and Plumber are invited to the girl's boss's house where the bad guy will explain the heist and essentially lay out the plot of the movie. He will describe how our two plumbers will be required to tap into an old oil well beneath the house and connect the runoff to the sewers beneath the city, which inevitably lead to the sea and the bad guy's waiting oil tanker. Trust me, it's possible. And yet we risk the audience's attention as we force them to sit through this potentially joy-killing exposition. Our solution? The Pope in the pool. In the scene before the meeting starts, we show our two doofus heroes having an iced tea drinking contest to show off for the beautiful girl whom they both like. By the time the meeting begins, they both need to pee really badly. The humor of the scene comes from them sitting there, legs crossed, trying to concentrate on the bad guy's PowerPoint demonstration while all manner of pee-inducing images are seen around them. Out the window, lawn sprinklers go and the neighbor's dog takes a big relieving whiz on a bush. And in the room, the girl pours a nice tall glass of iced tea for herself from a crystal pitcher. Seeing these things, our two heroes are going slowly cross-eyed with discomfort, all while the bad guy drones on with the vital heist information. We got the information across, and it's hilarious. In the Austin Power films, Mike Myers has done us one better by naming a character Basil Exposition, Michael York, whose sole purpose is to tell the boring backstory to the British super spy and us. Every time Basil appears, we know we're going to get a dose of elucidation, but reveal in the fact that they know we know it's boring and have made light of the fact. There are dozens of examples of the Pope in the pool, and now that you're aware of it, if you weren't already, you can come up with new ways to bury the backstory. Whether it's the two funny guards scene in Pirates of the Caribbean, where we get the lowdown on Jack Sparrow, or the batting cage scene in the thriller Like a Clear and Present Danger, the Pope in the pool gives us something to look at that takes the sting out of telling us what we need to know, and does so in a lovely and entertaining way. Good trick. Thanks, Mike Cheddar. Double Mumbo Jumbo. Double Mumbo Jumbo is a favorite. It's also a rule you and I can't break, even though we see it broken all the time. I propose to you that for some reason audiences will only accept one piece of magic per movie. It's the law. You cannot see aliens from outer space land in a UFO and then be bitten by a vampire and now be both aliens and undead. That, my friend, is a double mumbo jumbo. Yet, despite the fact that it throws a big all sabot in the machinery of the audience's brain, even though double mumbo jumbo is logically wrong, it's done all the time. My favorite example is Spider-Man. Why is it that you went willingly to see this movie? It became a big hit, and yet when it comes on cable, you don't want to see it again. Can't be the actors. We love Toby and Kristen and Willem. Can't be the special effects. Swinging through the city on a spider web is cool. I propose that our interest vanishes around the middle of the movie when the Green Goblin first appears. That's where I always lose interest anyway. Why? Double mumbo jumbo. The makers of Spider-Man ask us to believe two pieces of magic in one movie. Over here in this side of town, a kid is bitten by a radioactive spider and endowed with superhero powers that combine nuclear fusion and arachnia. Okay, I'll buy that. But then over the other side of town, William Defoe is getting a whole other set of magic powers from an entirely different source when a lab accident transmutes him into the Green Goblin. So, you're saying that we have a radioactive spider bite and a chemical accident, and both give one superpowers? I'm confused. They're straining my suspicion of disbelief. They're breaking the reality of the world they asked me to believe in once already. How dare they? Like Save the Cat, when I see the DMG rule violated, I get mad. It's sloppy. It's a product of moronic creativity. Yet, in the world of comic books, you're sort of excused. Double Mumbo Jumbo is also in another big hit, one that doesn't get let off the hook because it's from a comic book. In M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, we are asked to believe the aliens from outer space have invaded Earth. Apart from the reality embarrassing finale in which a super intelligent alien is dispatched with a baseball bat, "Swing away, Merrill" is now my favorite bad line. The movie is about Mel Gibson's crisis of faith in God. Huh? I'd say proof of an alien intelligence outside our solar system sort of trumps all discussion about faith in God, don't you think? But M asks us to juggle both, and it's a mess. My guess is M started his script with his one piece of magic, aliens, crop circles, and realized we'd seen that. In an effort to make his alien movie different, he tried to make it meaningful. Okay, but in doing so, he also made it muddy. The minute aliens arrive, the problem of Mel Gibson's crisis of faith is, well, ridiculous. You want to see a miracle? Look out the window. Aliens have landed, Mel. Because what M is asking us to balance in our minds is a debate about whether or not God and little green men exist. Well, God and aliens don't mix. Why? Because it's two sets of different kinds of magic. It's double mumbo jumbo. And if you do not believe me, try substituting the word Allah for the word God and see if your brain doesn't melt. So, unless you two have a hit movie in your back pocket or a comic book you must translate to screen, don't try it. Only one piece of magic per movie, please. It's the law. Laying pipe. Minority Report starring Tom Cruise did it. So did Along Come Polly featuring Ben Stiller and Jennifer Aniston. Each of these movies did something that risked failure. And once I point out their flaw, you will see that perhaps they did more than risk it. In my opinion, both these movies came up short because the filmmakers went long. They forgot one of the immutable laws of movie physics we screenwriters live by. Audiences can only stand so much pipe. What is a pipe? And what is the risk of laying too much of it? Well, let's take a look at Minority Report, the big budget movie based on yet another work by sci-fi writer Philip K. Dick. In Death, Dick has become the go-to guy for source material that has resulted in such hits as Blade Runner and Total Recall. In Minority Report, the hook is typically Dickian, but in this case, setting up the premise almost kills the story. Minority Report is about future crime, and we see exactly how this works in the opening scene of the film. A homicide is about to take place, and since Tom Cruise is in charge of this task force that monitors these future crimes, we see him spring into action and stop the murder. And the next scene, we jump to the politics involved in how this operation works. Tom, we learn, is under investigation by Colin Farrell. We even meet the three precognitives who lie in a tub of water and predict the future. We also see that in his personal life, Tom lost his child and has some kind of drug problem. We also meet Tom's mentor, Max von Sydow, whom we don't totally trust. Okay, all well and good. But by the time the writers lay out the pipe required to set up this story, I am personally exhausted. It's interesting, but what's the point? Where is this going? The story finally gets underway when Tom receives the latest future news and law. The criminal pegged is himself. Knowing that the precogs are new or wrong, Tom must find out how and why this mistake has been made and stop the murder that he supposedly will commit. The clock is running, and so are we. There's only one small problem. By the time this plot point happens, we are 40 minutes into the movie. It took 40 minutes to set up the story and explain to the audience what it is about. It took 40 minutes to get to the hook, which is a detective discovers he's criminal. Say it with me now, fellow students. That's a lot of pipe. In Along Came Polly, we find the same problem. In order to get to risk-averse divorce, Ben Stiller falling in love with crazy girl Jennifer Aniston, the writer also has a lot of pipe to lay. We have to see Ben marry his first wife, follow them on their honeymoon, and watch as Ben catches her in the arms of their scuba instructor. Sure, it's funny, and we'll put up with a lot when it comes to any movie that Ben is in. We love Mr. S. But the screenwriter and director, same guy, the funny and talented John Hamburg, risks our attention by laying a ton of story points to get to the reason we came to see this movie: Ben Stiller dating Jennifer Aniston. In both Along Came Polly and Minority Report, the laying out of all that pipe, a necessary thing to set up the story, risks our attention and, I believe, contributes to a lesser movie-going experience. By needing so much backstory to set up the movie, the whole story has been torqued out of shape. To be honest, laying pipe is something about which I'm hyper aware, and in many cases I have stopped writing stories due to the pipe required to set them up. Blank Check has a little bit more pipe up front that I'm comfortable with. There is a way too much splaining to do to get us to the point where our hero Preston walks into the bank with his blank check for $1,000,000. A lot of back and forth, a lot of pipe. It's not quite fatal, but almost. There is about a half a bit more movie in Act 1 than I like, and it risks the audience's patience. Get to it. I hear them screaming, and as screenwriters, we need to be aware of risking the attention spans of our audience. The point is, if you find yourself with a setup that takes more than 25 pages to introduce, you've got problems. We call it laying pipe. The audience calls it, I want my money back. Black vet, aka too much marzipan. When dealing with conceptual creativity, an offshoot of the double mumbo jumbo rule is a rule I call black vet. You often fall in love with certain elements of a movie idea and cling to them. You can't let go. You're Lenny in Of Mice and Men, and you're going to squeeze that little rodent to death. And usually when you find yourself in this situation, you must stop. This is when the black vet rule allows you to step back from the concept. What is black vet? Better to tell you where it came from. In the 1970s, comedian and now actor, writer, director Albert Brooks made several film parodies for Saturday Night Live. In one of his best, a piece that tweaked the nose of NBC and the silliness of network programming, Brooks did a hilarious fake promo for several upcoming shows that would be seen that fall on NBC. One of those was called Black Vet. In unctuous NBC Be There style, it showed a black actor who played a veterinarian cavorting with animals at his clinic. But this guy also has a past in the military. The punchline came when the narrator announced the name of the show and its fake promo line, Black Vet. He's a veteran and a veterinarian. Hilarious. But it's also so close to a real show on real TV, so much about the desperation of Hollywood types trying to squeeze 10 pounds of shit into a 5-pound bag, and I found it to be brilliant, and I personally never forgot it. Black Vet is a joke, and yet you'd be surprised how often we creative folks get caught piling on our great concepts. Like eating too much marzipan, a little goes a long way where ideas are concerned, and more does not always mean better. In my career, my favorite example of this came when I was working with my first writing partner, the quick-witted and entrepreneurial Howard Perkins. We were young and energetic writers with a lot of great ideas and a lot of bad ones, but Howard and I achieved early success and even earned our WGA cards while working together, a huge step forward for us both. Because we were working in TV, we had a TV series idea and a good one, I thought. Set in the 1950s, it followed the adventures of a blacklisted private eye. We called the show Lefty. Get it? Lefty referred to his political affiliation but sounded tough and very 50s. Okay, but Howard and I killed the idea when Howard insisted we also make our hero left-handed. And maybe Howard suggested he could also be an ex-boxer, a left-handed ex-boxer. So he is a communist and an ex-boxer and he's left-handed. I kept asking, and Howard thought that was great. Well, to my mind, it was pick one. To Howard, it was a matter of milking the idea for all it was worth. And while I usually trusted Howard's instinct on this stuff, Howard is brilliant when it comes to conceptualizing and a much smarter marketer than I just didn't get it. It was too much marzipan. It was black vet. What we had succumbed to was getting stuck on a good idea, and it's easy to do. You like that? Well, he Well, hell, you'll like it even more if I just add a couple of more scoops of the same thing on top, right? Well, no. To this day, whenever I talk with my pal Howard, he insists he was right about Lefty. Me, it's a whistle I don't hear. Still, but it makes a great rule of screenwriting and creativity. Simple is better. One concept at a time, please. You cannot digest too much information or pile on more to make it better. If you do, you get confused. If you do, stop. Watch out for that glacier. Very often, when bad guys are involved, they will be way off screen somewhere, far away from our hero and closing in. Sometimes they close in so slowly, the news tightens so lackadaisically, you want to yell at the screen. Watch out for the glacier. Well, I do anyway. That's how the danger is coming toward you, hero. Slowly. 1 inch per year. That's how unthreatening your supposedly threatening horror is. And if you think this doesn't happen to the big boys as well as you and me, you're wrong. Slow danger happens to good movies all the time. Just check out Pierce Brosnan's In Dante's Peak, one of two volcano movies that came out in 1997, presumably to cash in on all that St. Helens bus. And here's what Dante's Peak is about. See that volcano? It's gonna blow any minute. That's it. And that's all it is. A volcano is about to erupt and no one believes that handsome scientist Pierce Brosnan, so we sit there and wait for him to be right. We saw the trailer. Well, while we're waiting, at least we can look at Brosnan and think, yeah, Sean Connery was better. And check out Dustin Hoffman in Outbreak. Now there is a dull movie. Basically, it's about a super Ebola virus that comes to the US and Hoffman's attempt to find the cure. But while we're waiting, that virus is really slowly headed our way. It's a monster in the house movie basically. But in Outbreak, they have to create the house by quarantining a small town and introducing us in thumbnail sketches to the people who live there so we'll care if they die. Of course, we don't meet them until like page 75, but so what? We gotta do something while we're waiting for this butterball to baste and for Dustin to catch an infected monkey, which if I remember correctly, is the D or E plot of Outbreak, and man, how did these guys get talked into this? It even happens in Western. In Open Range, Kevin Costner's and Robert Duvall's cowboy buddy gets killed by the bad guys on about page 20, at which point Kevin and Robert sit there on their horses and talk about the bad guys and how they're gonna go get them. Yup, they sure should go get them. For about an hour and a half. If you ever wondered how the West was won, apparently it happens very slowly. See, even bright people think the slow encroaching danger of hot lava headed your way, oh, about by Thursday or so, will get our emotions stirring, but lo, it doesn't. Danger must be present danger. Stakes must be stakes for people we care about, and what might happen to them must be shown from the get-go so we know the consequences of the imminent threat. If not, you're violating the watch out for that glacier rule. Here is a list of other glaciers that approach slowly or rare too remote, unthreatening or dull. An evil slinky, snails armed with AK-47s, a foreclosure letter sent from Siberia, a homicidal one-legged grandmother, a herd of angry turtles, locusts. Even if you have a catchy title, do not write movies with these bad guys. Okay, well, unless the locusts are biologically altered locusts and like to eat human flesh. Then we'll talk. The Covenant of the Ark. The Covenant of the Ark is the screenwriting law that says every single character in your movie must change in the course of your story. The only characters who don't change are the bad guys, but the hero and his friends change a lot. And it's true. Although I hate the term arc because it's gotten so overused by development executive and how to write a screenplay authors, I do like what it stands for. Arc is a term that means the change that occurs to any character from the beginning through the middle and to the end of each character's journey, another ST kind of term. But when it's done well, when we can chart the growth and change each character undergoes in the course of a movie, it's a poem. What you are saying in essence is this story, this experience is so important, so life-changing for all involved, even you, the audience. It affects every single person that is in its orbit. From time immemorial, all good stories show growth and track change in all its characters. Why is this? I think the reason that characters must change in the course of a movie is because of if your story is worth telling, it must be vitally important to everyone involved. This is why setups and payoffs for each character have to be crafted carefully and tracked throughout. I don't know why, but Pretty Woman comes to mind as a good example of this. Everybody arcs in Pretty Woman. Richard Gere, Julia Roberts, Laura San Giacomo, even the mentor figure Hector Elizondo are touched by the experience of this love story and transformed because of it. Everyone but the bad guy Jason Alexander, who learns exactly zero. Pretty Woman is one of hundreds of carefully crafted successful movies in which this rule applies. All the really good movies do these ones that you remember, that make you laugh and cry, and the ones that you want to see a second time. Hint, hint. In a sense, stories are about change, and the measuring stick that tells us who succeeds and who doesn't is seen in the ability to change. Good guys are those who willingly accept change and see it as a positive force. Bad guys are those who refuse to change, who will curl up and die in their own juices, unable to move out of their rut their lives represent. To succeed in life is to be able to transform. That's why it's basis not only for of good storytelling but also the world's best known religions. Change is good because it represents rebirth, the promise of a refreshed start. The covenant of the ark. And don't we all want to believe that? Don't we all want to jump into the swim of life after seeing a good movie? Don't we want to get out of our ruts, try something new, and be open to the healing power of change after experiencing a movie in which everybody arcs? Yes, we do. Everybody arcs. That's one of the slogans I have written on a yellow post-it and have stuck to the top of my iMac computer whenever I am writing a screenplay. And before I sit down to write, I make notes on how all my characters are going to arc by charting their stories as they are laid out on the board with the milestones of change noted as each character progresses through the story. It's a must that you do the same. If your script feels that flat, if you are getting the sense that something's not happening in the story, do a quick covenant of the arc check and see if you need to do more work on making everybody change and grow and transform. Everyone, that is, except the bad guy. Keep the press out. Here's where I get to show off, big time. You see, I learned this next lesson from Steven Spielberg, personally. Oh yeah, we worked together. And it was one of the most educational experiences of my career. But in terms of the immutable laws of screenwriting, that's the guy who really should write the book. I can only paraphrase. To wit, keep the press out. The rule I learned from Steven Spielberg was taught to me while we were developing a screenplay Jim Hogan and I had sold to Emblem called Nuclear Family. The premise of this movie is a family camps out one night on a nuclear dump site and wakes up the next day with superpowers. Nuclear Family is a wish fulfillment comedy. Each family member has a need that their superpower quenches. Dad and that exec gets the power to read minds and thus leaps ahead of his rat-fink nemesis at work. Mom, a housewife, gets the power of telekinesis and becomes a supermom who can move objects with her mind. Teen son becomes the Flash and suddenly his high school's star halfback, and teen daughter forever behind in her schoolwork gets a super brain and is now able to ace her SATs. It's a fun special effects laden fantasy, but it has a message too. In the end, each of them gives up their powers. Being successful, they find, is not as important as being a family. And yet, in the development process, we wanted to explore every option. When one of us, me, I think, foolishly pitched that maybe we should have these powers discovered by the media and to have the family swarmed by the news networks. Steven Spielberg said no, and he told us why. You'll notice that there are no news crews in E.T., the story of an extraterrestrial creature who comes to Earth and into the lives of a similar cul-de-sac dwelling family. Sure, you've got a really good reason for a news crew. They've got one, a real-life alien, and it's right there for everyone to see. But in rewrites with the screenwriter Melissa Matheson, Spielberg discovered that it blew the reality of the premise to invite the press in, by keeping it contained among the family and on the blog, by essentially keeping this secret between them and us, the audience. The magic stayed real. When you think about it, to bring the press into E.T. would indeed have ruined it. The term breaking the fourth wall springs to mind. That is the phrase that means violating the gossamer beneath the proscenium arc that separates the play from the audience. To bring the press into our little drama would have done the same. Of course, this is what separates the Spielberg from the rest of us, including the Shyamalans. Keep the press out is a rule you won't see violated in any DreamWorks film, but in M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, there is that darn movie again. The rule is violated and I think suffers because of it. Holed up in their Pennsylvania farmhouse, Mel Gibson's family is besieged by aliens. First the crop circles, then aliens arrive and try to break into Mel's house. And do what? We're not sure. Night of the Living Dead like. So while we're waiting for the attack, Mel and his family put on their tinfoil hats. God, what a movie. And watch TV. They're on CNN. News of other aliens landing all over the world is reported. There is even some spooky footage of one such alien invading a children's birthday party in South America. And all that's interesting, but so what? What does it have to do with the drama of Mel trying to protect his family from the aliens that are swarming his house? I think it even makes their situation less desperate. They're no longer alone with this problem. Everyone's dealing with it. Like in the E.T. example, bringing the press into our secret Brexit, and it took me as an audience member out of the story. The point is, bring the press in with care. Unless it's about the press, unless your movie involves a worldwide problem and we follow stories with characters all over the world, and it's important for them all to know each other. Take a tip from me and Steven Spielberg. Keep the press out. Summary. So now you know some basics, and if you're like me, you want to know more and make up others as you go on. These are little eurekas that one experiences after watching a truckload of movies over the years. Suddenly you realize why things are done, what that scene really was for, and it makes you feel like a genius. Suddenly you're in on the trick of screenwriting and have the experience of actually opening up the back of the Swiss watch and seeing how the gears are put together. So that's how that works, you suddenly think. You feel like you're learning the magician's secrets. Once you see these little tricks, the urge to put a label to them can't be far behind. This is why Save the Cat, The Pope in the Pool, Black Vet, and Keep the Press Out are memorable to me anyway, and vital to be so. Yes, it's good, slangy fan. It's also a way not to forget what you've learned, and when you catch yourself drifting into a mistake or pushing up against a rule you'd like to break, these pithy little lessons give you an instant assessment on the pros and cons of minding or breaking the law. How many times have I caught myself drifting into one or more of these errors during the course of creating and writing a screenplay? Well, many, but the point of all this is to learn shortcuts to save time. Screenwriting is like solving a puzzle over and over. You get faster with practice. The more stories you break, the more outlines you beat out to the completion. The more screenplays you tag with the end, the better you get. These shortcuts are essential time savers. Exercises. 1. Name a movie hero that is unlikable. Did the creators of the movie do anything to deal with this? What new Save the Cat tricks can be used to make a hero likable, but not so phony baloney that we rejects the device? 2. Find examples in other movies that use the Pope in the pool. Does burying the exposition hurt or enhance your understanding of what's going on in the plot? 3. Fix Spider-Man. Let's say you don't have to follow the storyline that was created in the Marvel comic book Stan Lee created. What changes would you make to the screenplay that could eliminate its double mumbo jumbo? 4. Since you liked M. Night Shyamalan's Sign and think that I am out of my mind for not liking it, email me at the address found at the end of chapter 1 and explain M. Night Shyamalan's Unbreakable to me, a movie so preposterous it makes Signs look like Battleship Potemkin. But remember, I've been working on my argument and I am still ticked about not getting my $10 back from the theater.